Home for the African National Congress's 54th National Elective Conference, which kicks off this morning. Now, Ayanda Mhlongo, our SABC News reporter, is there. Very good morning to you, Ayanda.
Very good morning to you, Pearl, once again, and morning to our viewers at home. Now, Pearl, we promised to give you all the latest developments taking place here at NASREC Expo Center, where, of course, today is the start of the ANC's 54th National Conference. And just talking about bringing you the latest news, we have learned that at around 8 o'clock this morning, there will be a special NEC that will convene, and that is to discuss the court rulings in 3 provinces yesterday with respect to the delegates and some of the delegates, and particularly the representatives of the provincial executive committees that were expected to be amongst the delegates here at this conference. So joining me now to discuss more on this and the special NEC, and of course what the ANC plans around these court rulings, I'm now joined by the spokesperson of the ANC, Mr. Zizi Kodwa. Zizi, good morning to you, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning to you.
Of course, yesterday on the eve, the 3 court rulings caused a lot of panic, people questioning what then is going to happen. We understand that this morning there is going to be that special NEC. Take us through that, please.
The NEC is a custodian, is responsible, is a host of this conference, and therefore even if there was a normal scheduled meeting of the last NEC in September, the NEC can meet in between sessions of this conference if there is urgent matter to be discussed. Of course, the issue about the rulings yesterday, it will require ANC to provide leadership at plenary. We can't go to the plenary to give our own different interpretation of what it means and what it does not mean. And therefore it's important that we meet for about a few minutes to clarify one another on the implications first, because in the main, we don't think necessarily the judgments themselves have got any bearing to the conference in itself. The National Conference is not a conference of provinces, worse with regions, like Bujanala, because regions have no status here. They don't participate, except that we invited them to per region as observers. But of course, it may be interested that we want to understand to an extent that some of the, not only provinces, but branches, for example, a number of branches in Bujanala, some branches in Free State. What is the implication of that? We are no longer talking about people who are still on their way to the National Conference. We are talking about people who are here. What do we do about them? There is precedence how we dealt with this issue in 2012. Something similar in Mhlongo happened, where we had to take a decision on the eve of the conference in order to color code the delegation from the PEC of Free State. Is that an option? Is what the NEC this morning must consider.
Do you see, of course, that there's also going to be the adoption of the credentials? Do you see this possibly having an effect on that?
Credentials is a process. That's why even the convenership of this meeting started a year ago. That's why the Deputy Secretary General, the Secretary General as well, working with the provincial secretaries, the work that they've been doing constitute what is called credentials. So what will be presented here will be a product of a long protected process, including what comes out of the registration, which took up until the early hours of this morning, but also taking into account the effect of yesterday's judgments.
Now, the decision could be that they obviously said they are here, and you now will be discussing in terms of their participation, how these delegates are going to participate. I'm sure there's going to be quite a lot of people that are going to be eagerly watching that. You know, of course, there's been concern about numbers of people who will be coming in. So that is something that, of course, the NEC is going to decide on that.
What the NEC and the African National Congress will not do is to undermine and to act against the judgments or the rulings of our courts. We have always complied with the directive and the judgments of our courts. It's important that to make that point. But in that context, we also, in some instances, we reserve our right in terms of the remedies and the recourse provided for, both in terms of the Constitution and our rights as an applicant or as an aggrieved party. So we'll consider options where it is appropriate. You must remember these judgments are more specific to a regional dynamic or a province. They don't have necessarily direct bearing about the delegation to this conference. So that decision will take it in consideration of the fact that they are not so much about a national conference, they are more about a province specific, about a region specific.
The court cases, I know, for example, in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, as you know, that it's brought about a lot of divisions, the court case. And here you want the ANC to unify. That has been the message of the ANC, that this conference has to be about unity of the ANC. Do you possibly are concerned in regards to that, and knowing that it now means that there are those who in favor of or who brought about these applications? Some of them are here, and those that, of course, were respondents in the matters, and how the two groups are going to be able to come together?
I don't think the conference must just address the symptoms of people going to court. I think this is a platform for us to express ourselves as an organization. What is the root cause of comrades outside of internal mechanism, which I think there is sufficient internal mechanism for people who've got dispute and appeals? Why do they decide to go outside of the organization? Not because they are doing it wrong to go to court if you feel aggrieved and you don't feel satisfied internally, but what is it that we can do to make sure that there is sufficient mechanism, although sometimes it's done to undermine even the internal mechanism we have. But how can we make sure that it does not accelerate to an extent that we see now almost every conference, every meeting, there's a possibility that it may be contested in a court of law? And I think this conference must express itself. If we're to talk about organizational renewal, this talk about unity of the organization, we've got to make sure that we deal with those issues, including, among others, if we've got people who use courts and they are here, let's listen to them. What is it that we are doing? So there are lessons to be learned. If there are any self-corrections to be done, we will do that as a self-correction mechanism on behalf of the leadership.
Zizi, before I let you go, in the Northern Cape, I understand that there's some members there have also filed that planning to take the PC there to court. Just very briefly, is that something that possibly you're going to try and intervene in very quickly? You are aware that the Northern Cape has been through this route before, and all those applications have been dismissed by the court of law. We have no reason to doubt that another court again will dismiss the application. Zizigoto, thank you so much for your time. The spokesperson for the ANC, Zizigoto, of course, just giving us talking about the special NEC that will be taking place today to discuss the outcomes of those 3 court rulings in 3 provinces. We're going to leave things here for now and going to go for a short ad break.